My name is Bodo Sieber, the CEO of Tagmarshal. Very excited to have experts with us today for our session. How Priddis Greens, Vancouver Golf Club and Donalda Club have created exceptional player experiences while increasing operational efficiencies. And you have all done that in a very busy season. So I'd like to welcome our three experts, John Wilson, Andrew McCarthy, and Sean Thompson. Gents, welcome and thank you so much for making some time. Let me jump straight into some introductions because we've got a lot to get through. So if you don't mind taking it from the left, John, please why don't you do a quick intro to Priddis Greens and yourself.
Thanks, Bodo. My name is John Wilson. I've been in the golf business for over 30 years. The past 8 years have been spent at the beautiful Priddis Greens Golf Club. Prior to that, I spent 20 years as the director of golf at the Heritage Point Golf Club. Priddis is a 36-hole private facility. We have 850 shareholders and about 1,370 members. This past season, we had 65,000 rounds played on the two golf courses combined. We've hosted the Canadian Women's Open, the LPGA event 3 times. I spent time personally on the Alberta PGA board and finished as a 2-year term as president, and I also spent 4 years on the PGA of Canada board. So I've tried to be involved with the association, and we found Tagmarshal to be a very beneficial to our operation this past season, and we look forward to moving ahead and continuing with such a great opportunity.
Thank you, John, and thanks for the intro, and also great to hear in what you've given to golf in Canada over a long and successful career. Let's move on to the Donalda Club and Andrew.
Thanks, Bodo. Thanks for having me. Not quite as seasoned as John, I guess, in the beard department either, but I've been in the CPGA since 2006. Just finished my 9th season here at Donalda Club. We're a 18-hole private facility, basically in the heart of Toronto. We've got close to 2,500 members, 960 of which are our golf members. So it's a pretty active place. I spent a bit of time at public courses, resort courses, and another private club before coming here. But Donalda's my home now, and I love it here so far. So we kind of call ourselves the cottage in the city. We're minutes away from downtown, as I mentioned, and a super active membership that uses Donalda as their getaway from work and from regular life. So it's a really busy place, and Tagmarshal's helped us streamline things that are happening on the golf course when we get going on busy days.
Thank you, Andrew. Brilliant. I love the photo as well. It's it makes it seem like you can hit the ball into the city straight from the course. It's fantastic.
Yeah.
Sean, yourself, Vancouver side.
Yeah, so originally from over in Scotland, grew up in St Andrews, so I was quite lucky to have the opportunity to grow up playing golf there. Turned professional and started working at a club called the Renaissance Club down in the East Lothians. After that, moved out to Calgary in Alberta there. That's where I've spent most of my career since being in Canada. I was at 3 different clubs at my time in Calgary there. I was at Priddis Greens for a year. Unfortunately, didn't get the opportunity to work with John Wilson, but he joined the club maybe a few years after I'd left. Then I was at the Calgary Golf and Country Club, and then had my first head pro opportunity down at Cottonwood Golf and Country Club. That was kind of where I first learned of Tagmarshal and had an opportunity to go down to the PGA show and sit in on one of the seminars down there, and it really sparked my interest. Unfortunately, we weren't able to start up with Tagmarshal at Cottonwood there, but upon moving out to Vancouver here, it sounded like they had maybe been in contact with Tagmarshal a few times and showed some interest, and we were lucky enough to get on board this year, and it's been a great experience so far. We are probably the busiest private golf club or in our area. in normal years, we'd maybe do 42,000 rounds. Since the pandemic, last year, even with a 6-week closure, we were about 50,000 rounds. And there was a period of time here where we were tracking towards 60,000 rounds this year. So, having something that can manage our flow and allow us to make some kind of good informed decisions on, tea time intervals, fivesomes, all that kind of stuff. That was some baseline information that we were gathering this year. And, we'll be able to maybe make some decisions on that ahead of next year. So, yeah.
Fantastic. So we've got some international representation here, and from the very center of the universe as far as golf is concerned. That's brilliant. Okay, gents, thank you so much for the intros. Very excited to have you share some insights. And for the guests, if you have any questions at any time, please feel free to post them in our chat or our Q&A. We'll obviously try and get to them. For those of you who don't know Tagmarshal, if you'll allow me just a short introduction. So we are an optimization system specializing and focusing on the golf course traffic. We now have tracked way over 20 million golf rounds, and obviously with COVID that has seen quite a boost as well. After things came to a bit of a halt last year in April, May, has been a fantastic rebound in terms of the usage, much like you would have seen at your clubs. And we're now actually working with closer to 400 clubs. In terms of Canada, I got some fantastic partners, and some go back 3 or 4 years. I think Summit Golf and Wooden Sticks were the first generation, and now we work with quite a few, including our 3 guests, but also Whiskey Run, Fire Rock, Muskoka Highlands, quite a few. So it's a really great market for us because we're finding it quite homogenous, and the operators are really switched on, because you all know you need to get a lot done in a short season, right? So we've had a lot of great partnerships built in the market. Further south in the US, we're very blessed to work with 30 of the top 100 clubs there, including your Wingfoot, Botswell, Oakmont, sort of private top tier, but also the daily fee / resorts. We're talking about Bandon Dunes, where John was fortunate enough to spend just last week with some of his members. And obviously, Pebble Beach, Erin Hills was our very first customer. But most of our customers are really middle of the road clubs that are trying to stay ahead and get ahead and do things a little bit different to the competition. And we're also very fortunate in being tech partners to the European Tour and adding value to the USGA and RNA where we can on the data front, first and foremost, and just looking to help the industry wherever possible. But what's always fantastic for me to see is how willing and open many of the operators are to share their experience and their insights with others. And that is something that's really great about the golf industry. We're all competitors, but we're also in it together, right? So today, we've got a few points to talk to. Key factors on the play experience, which we're going to start with, then looking at optimization tools that the clubs have implemented. What's the members and guest response been, which is always a big question, and how have the tools allowed you to be more efficient? So to get us going, I would like to field a question with you, gents, while we look at Donalda Club again here in the background. And I'm also going to ask this question to our crowd. The key factors that influence the play experience. Out of this list of 6 or 7 that are not ranked in any way, potentially alphabetically, not even course design, conditioning, clubhouse amenities, pace and flow of play, playing partners, who's in my group, accessibility, tee times availability, big challenge obviously in such a high volume season, value and cost. What would you say are the top 3 for you, having worked in industry for a long time, but also as a player? Let's start with John, if you don't mind, while I'm pulling up a poll. What are the top 3 out of this list for yourself?
I think for me, Bodo, it's going to be course conditioning, pace of play, and tee time availability. I think those are the 3 keys that I see for a good experience on the golf course and at a members club, and that's where their expectations would be. So course conditioning, pace and flow of play, and accessibility to tee times.
Okay. Thank you. Andrew, from your side?
Yeah, probably pretty similar to John. I mean, conditioning and pace are paramount in my mind, at least as a player, and I think probably for our members. I think accessibility or maybe cost and value would be my third option.
Thanks. And Sean, from your side, also having seen a lot of golf on two sides of the globe.
Yeah, I think course conditioning, pace of play would definitely be paramount. Over the last number of years, I think that more recently the accessibility and tee time availability. I'm sure everybody's had the same headaches that we've had in processing ballots and issuing tee times. So I would say that accessibility and tee time availability would jump into those top three after the last couple of years here.
We got you. Let's see what our guests have said. So we've got pace of play and pace of flow play just ahead of course conditioning, and at number 3, accessibility and tee times availability. You must have influenced people's polling here heavily. No, I'm joking. No, there are no surprises here, right? I mean, we're all as players, we all know what counts, right? And the USGA's research that is quite broad-based and obviously gets redone and recycled and reused. They found the same. So I think they quizzed 20,000 players on all coast and central, and 82% said course conditioning is key to their enjoyment. So that's a key factor. And if you're looking at your budgets, as well, because with many clubs, it's not a case of how much, do we need to spend, but how much can we possibly find to throw at it? Like, can we get a little bit more out there to boost our conditioning? But very close to that is pace, flow, and time it takes to play. That's just a couple of percentage points off. And in between, there's actually tee time availability, but also who's in my group, right? So they all count a lot. But what's important to keep in mind is, other than effort, in terms of cost, to make a big impact here, it's nowhere near the cost that a big impact on conditioning would have, right? If I can throw out a theory, like if you wanted to improve your conditioning by 25%, what would that cost you? I mean, already you're doing a lot, right? It's probably more than 25% in your conditioning budget. You probably have to double it, right, to get a little bit more out of that. But if you wanted to improve your pace of play by 25%, or maybe even 50 or 80%, in terms of where you're at, the cost for that is actually marginal, right? So it's something that's, we've seen many clubs say, well, it's smart thing to invest in. John, from your point of view, have you seen conditioning costs rise at your club? Also with labor costs obviously going up alongside that. Is that a topic when it comes to budgeting?
Always, yeah. I think it's, it's the biggest portion of your club budget is the maintenance or turf care budget. And, it's not only the staffing, it's the cost of the machinery, it's the cost of all the other products, fertilizer, fungicides, everything else that's involved with maintaining your golf course at the level that you need to ensure that you have member satisfaction. So yeah, those costs are continuing to rise, and shafts, we're experiencing staff shortages here in Canada. So it's more and more difficult to be able to, I guess, live up to the level that your members would expect.
Sure. Robot mowers in the future. It's coming.
Mm-hmm. I think so.
Robot vacuum cleaner at home. It's not a fast stretch. Andrew, from your side, given how important pace and flow of play is to the players, would you expect that every club would have that as a line item somewhere in their budget to pay attention to? And in the traditional way, that would have been, can we get some marshals out? Is that something that you think is a must-have?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, just speaking to member experience and satisfaction, if, members are out there spending, 4.5, 5 hours on a golf course, they're not going to come off all that happy. So, in terms of creating the member experience that we want here, specifically at Donalda, that's, I don't know if it's necessary. Well, it is a line item now with Tagmarshal and with Marshall labor and budgeting in the past. So That's something we looked at pretty closely before pulling the trigger on Tagmarshal was, how much are we spending on quote unquote pace of play, and how much would it cost us to effectively get something in place that could manage it a little bit better, which is, where we ended up with Tagmarshal, obviously. So it certainly needs to be a consideration for all clubs, public or private.
Sure. Sean, from your side, we're talking about pace and flow of play. Would you say there's a difference? And if you're a player, if you can pick one, which one do you want to work really well for you?
Yeah, I mean, pace of play generally at this particular club that I'm at right now, obviously has been a big point of contention. So people are wanting, one of the things that we acknowledged was, that our pace of play varied significantly, throughout the day, and the actual expectations of our membership was different. Depending on what time of day that they were playing. And we had one kind of blanket pace of play policy of, 4 hours and 10 minutes. And, so it became very obvious very early that we needed kind of a graduated pace of play system for our early morning golfers to play, a lot faster. And then, obviously a different expectation for our later golfers in the day. So I think that's probably a combination of them both, in terms of the overall pace of play and the flow at different times of day. I think probably the overall pace of play would be more important, but I think the flow is almost equally as important. So
sure, yeah, it goes hand in hand. But I would wager and say if you have a round with no holdups and it takes 50 minutes longer than you'd expect, it's probably okay. And sometimes you may have a round that's on pace in terms of your goal time, but you were held up quite a few times, and that doesn't quite feel right, So it goes hand in hand. But it definitely, and I think we all agreed, pace to give it attention because we're here to serve the members and guests, right? And there's some more research that shows a very clear correlation between what is called the Net Promoter Score, which is basically the subtotal of an experience that a consumer would have with a product or service, and they would then rate it out of 10. You've all done that, right? 0 being it was absolutely horrible, I would not recommend this to my worst enemy, and 10 is like, this was delightful, I'll tell all my friends about it, right? And anything between then grades, and normally between 4 and 7 is people don't even worry about responding, so they only respond if they're unhappy or if they're very happy. But the correlation is if there's a medium to good flow of play, Net Promoter Score is really high. If there's a bad flow of play, it's very polar, it goes rock bottom immediately. And this data comes from the Golf Innovation Symposium that the USGA hosted in Tokyo in 2019, when we could still travel. Tokyo was chosen because it would host the Olympics and also the Olympic golf tournament a year later, which ended up being postponed, as we all know. But what they found, and they do really broad-based, literally millions of surveys every month. There are 3 things that a club needs to do right: is make people feel welcome, have a good flow out on the course, and players really enjoy meeting on-course staff. And it doesn't have to be 100 check-ins. It may be 1, maybe 2, right? But some level of we're feeling looked after. And if that's done right, then the Net Promoter Score is sky high. If none of this is done right, it's rock bottom. And this is the 101, I suppose. John, if we want to go back to you and obviously your vast experience, what does that look like at Priddis? Maybe just briefly. And is that something that you have got a game plan for in terms of your staff really being aware of this sort of thing?
Oh yeah, absolutely, Bodo. I think it's important that, our members, when they're out there, they feel welcomed and that we're ready for them. We like to greet them when they arrive. We like to send them off the first tee with our starter, giving kind of the lay of the land, the expected pace for the day. Anything they may see as far as changes in regular course conditions, we offer them what the green speed is, if they're riding, what the cart path ruling is for that day. And then we kind of like to leave them out there if there's a situation that needs to be addressed. And through the use of Tagmarshal, we've been able to identify those early. Then we'll make a visit out to the golf course. Certain days during some of our league play is we'll make a visit out there just to make sure everybody's happy and enjoying it, but really, they want to have we try to ensure that there's no maintenance traffic out there when the golfers are out there, and try to minimize any other additional traffic out there. But we want to make sure that the day is going as they expected, and if not even better. So I think that's what our members expect, and we just try to aid in that. And we'll continue to do that moving forward.
Yeah, sure. And that's your membership thanks you with loyalty, right? And you're creating a positive culture, which makes everyone's day better. Two questions here for Andrew and Sean. Andrew, I know that you were looking for efficiencies and just really being accurate out on the course when it comes to ensuring that your members get what they expect, but also you can do it in a way that doesn't eat up everyone's hours. So in terms of the flow game plan for you, and maybe also coupling meeting on-course staff and making these interactions positive, what are some of the things that you've learned?
Yeah, so I guess when we began the discussion about Tagmarshal, it was all brought on by concerns from the membership that there was just too much traffic on course, whether it was maintenance, player assistance, marshals, all that sort of stuff. So we wanted to be able to monitor pace sort of from the pro shop without having marshals driving around looking for problems and sort of finding issues out there while creating chaos at the same time. I don't know if you know Donalda, but it's kind of a north-south golf course along the Don River, and there's a lot of overlapping holes and sort of you crisscross, go out and come back. So there's a lot of places to have disturbances, if you will. So Tagmarshal allowed us to more or less eliminate our player assistance on certain days that weren't super busy and still monitor pace of play from in the shop. So all of our professionals have the screen up in the pro shop. They're getting text messages when groups are falling out of pace. So we took kind of more of a ghost approach, I guess, on pace. And if everything was flowing well and pace was great, they may not see a professional or on-course staff, but if there were issues, we were able to go out and monitor it effectively to a point without disturbing a whole lot of on-course traffic.
That's the way to do it. Sean, from your side, and if you don't mind me, I need to keep us on pace a little bit, and I know that there's many points that we want to still go to, but if I can tackle you here for the next point, which optimization tools and processes have you put in place to really create that exceptional player experience at the Vancouver club? And we put a little quote on here: what gets measured gets managed. If you can't measure it, you can't improve it, because I know that for all of you, data has been important. Just a very brief intro, because we're jumping into the Tagmarshal system, and obviously that's the optimization tool that we talk about here. But we have got a system that's got a front end that collects data and then sends that to a server where the data gets processed, and there's algorithms making sense of it. We're going to look at what that looks like in just a minute. Sean, from your side, please tell us about your setup in terms of cart, walkers, and which of those system options you have gone for.
Yeah, so we issue a traditional tag to every group that goes out. We don't have it integrated with our carts. We're a fairly walkable golf course, and a large majority of our play is walking. So we didn't necessarily see the value in installing it in all of our carts, but we can still issue the tags to groups that are cart riders. And it's worked out well for us. Very similar to Andrew, we've got all of the office computers. We have the map up, and we're keeping an eye on it. We have notifications that are either calling the shop or sending text messages or pop-ups on the screen. So yeah.
Great. So for our guests here, there's an option obviously that we can install in a golf cart that even comes with a geofence buzzer, and then we do have the two-way that interfaces back at the players. But really, it depends on the club and what's best for them. And sometimes a club would start on one system and then upgrade once they're more familiar with things. But what they all have in common is they aggregate data, and they really give you that real-time line of sight, and then a lot of insight into what are the variables that matter. John, if I may jump back to you. So this is this is a flipped around Erin Hills where our designer has planted some additional trees. So this is a course that doesn't exist, but you know exactly what's up on this course, even though you've never been there, just at a glance. So just give us a 30 seconds of what you can see here, just explaining this picture to somebody who doesn't know the Tagmarshal back end and the Tagmarshal map like you do.
Well, tag number 17 has caused some issues out there. So they're obviously slowing down group number 18, which is being detained by group number 17. So at that point, we would look at kind of the analytical data of what's going on with 17 as far as their pace is going. And we would make a decision on whether we should go out and have a visit with them. If we look at that data, we see that they're 16 or 6 minutes behind play. And we would also look at the members' names and see if there's kind of a common denominator there or situation. And we would be able to assess from the desktop as to what's going on in the golf course. The rest of the golf course looks like everything's flowing pretty good. There's not too many concerns out there. And it doesn't look like it's a real busy day so far. So we would use this data to make a decision on how we were going to do it. We would expect the senior professional on staff to make those assessments and make a plan.
Thank you. When can you start doing demos for us? No, I'm joking. So obviously the green groups are all good, and then like John mentioned, the big one, like there's a size difference, and the color shows, okay, this is the head of the snake here, and they're holding up these orange guys. Red means they're out of position, but they're not currently impacting on the groups behind them. So it really gives you that complete picture at a glance. And we do have a tie-in into, it can be a text message alert as well. If you want, you can set that when somebody's 5-10 minutes off, it gets a message to you. Some clubs put a big screen in their clubhouse because they want their members or guests to also see that there is a bit of an eye in the sky. So from a live management point of view, certainly helpful. And then we also show, and that's the data that John was referring to, what's their status been at the holes that they've played. And if there's a negative trend, or maybe it's just an outlier hole, then that influences decisions, you know, as to how shall we respond to a group like this. Andrew, from your side, you have got a T-sheet integrated, right? So that it pulls the player names. Which T-sheet do you use? And is that something that's helpful to your team when it comes to management?
Yeah, for sure. We use Jonas, and it's integrated directly. So every morning our starters assigning tags to live groups on our tee time management system. So that makes it saves some time in the prep, and also lets us know who's exactly in every group, which is crucial. Looking at this map, I always look for the path of least resistance with our situation. So I see kind of going out, meeting this group on the 6th tee, and, you know, if we know our members well enough, maybe I pick the gentleman in that foursome that I'd prefer to have the conversation with, and then I head back to the shop, and hopefully the problem takes care of itself.
Yeah. Yeah, no, it's helpful. The more information you have, the easier your conversation is. Sean, from your side, what is your gameplay when it comes to actually having an interaction with a group that's out of position? And you will note that I didn't say slow, and that's for a reason. What is your script like, and how do you keep this interaction constructive? And what does your team do?
Yeah, so in previous years, we have had a marshal presence on the golf course. And, you know, one of the things that became apparent from previous feedback is they didn't really want to have that interaction with the marshal. They maybe didn't respect the message that was trying to be delivered. And, you know, it came across a lot more constructively from a golf professional that might have a better relationship, a more expensive relationship with the member. And, you know, because we can be that much more targeted in our interventions with Tagmarshal, you know, it's a lot easier for golf professionals to free up some time to go and do that. And, you know, for the most part, it's the interaction is so much more fact-based. You know, you can say, you know, guys, you're 6 minutes behind pace. You know, there's you're holding up 2 groups behind you. You know, you can circle back with them and say, okay, guys, you've done a little bit better. You're only 3 minutes behind pace now, but keep going. Instead of it being, an opinion and like you said, avoiding the S word, avoiding slow, is always a good place to start. But yeah, people are just that much more receptive when it's based on evidence, and it's been a very good addition to be able to have this information readily available. So.
Yeah, I think one of the takeaways to anyone who's joined, if you have anyone paying attention to the pace out there, the simplest thing to do better is do not tell players you're slow, get on with it. Like, that is a very difficult path to tread. Nobody wants to be told they're slow. And they will always find a reason why, and it's a group in front of us. But there's ways to frame this differently. Being out of position is one, and that's normally an easy one, because, well, you're supposed to be half a hole ahead or a hole ahead. Well, let's get back into that position, and then everyone's happy. How can you help me do that, right? So keeping it positive, and there's a further research set that confirms what Sean is saying, is that marshals are not well liked on the golf course. A friend of mine, he goes and finds a marshals and tips him $20 just to be kind. And because those corrective pace of player actions are not they're not appreciated. On the flip side, the research also shows if the marshal etiquette is positive, that is one of the biggest and most surprising interactions that players normally don't expect. And then they rate that really high. So if the marshal interaction or the player assistant interaction is constructive and positive, that's actually a benefit. I think it's a good point now to actually jump at what do the members say and how the guests responded. Maybe if we can go back to John, because I know this is not an easy thing to manage, and especially historically, where your marshals are trying their hardest, they're maybe at the wrong place at the wrong time, and then got very little to go on. Like Sean spoke about respect. So how have your members responded? Firstly, to you and your leadership making a decision to go with technology, but then also in the day-to-day.
I think for the most part, Bodo, they've embraced it. They bought into it, obviously, as a club, and we introduced it to them slowly. I would think we had everybody through the month of May taking their tags with them, and then we started sharing the analytical data with them, and with that came more questions of how can we get better, or how come this golf course is a different pace than that golf course. And I think that was the real benefit that we found from our members, is they were generally interested in being better and getting the pace better at the club. And some of the things that were very interesting for us is the data that we obtained early in the season allowed us to determine how we operate the tee sheet. And we determined that 10-minute tee times are the best for the flow for both golf courses. It also identified that our golf courses are both under 4 hours and 10 minutes, when our posted pace prior to that was 4:20 and 4:25. And our members embraced that. They became something that they're a 4-hour club, and they're going to live up to it. And they're always looking for more information. So what we've included now in our weekly e-blast is what the pace of play was for the week prior, and what the expectation was, and the percentage of players in rounds that were on pace. And we're going to continue to do that. And you mentioned earlier about having the screen in the clubhouse, as we have two of our big screen TVs that show the Tagmarshal pace, one for each golf course, and our members are generally interested in that, and that's certainly helped the buy-in, and there's it's been a real positive for Priddis.
Andrew, from your side, you are in year 2, right? So you've got some year-on-year data, and also is it second nature now? But just going back to the beginning, and also now in year 2, how the members responded, and what's that interaction like, and how did you get going on the system in terms of buy-in?
Yeah, so we made the decision. We saw Tagmarshal at the PGA show in 2019, made the decision to purchase it, and started really educating the members before the season even started as to what we were trying to do and what our goal was and what Tagmarshal was going to try and accomplish for us. So really the first tee time of the year, people were kind of ready to go and understood what it was. We still got some members wondering if we're tracking them with GPS devices and all that sort of stuff, but by and large the membership embraced it right away. I love John's idea about sending weekly data. We did kind of a year-end thing and discussed the season as a whole and how our course flowed and some things we were going to change. I think one of the biggest takeaways was, the year-end stats you get from Tagmarshal. It gave us an actual, hole by hole. This is what this hole plays on average, and a time par that's kind of based on facts rather than just that big old Excel file we had that was, based on maybe a Golf Ontario recommendation from years ago. So we made some adjustments to our time par on each hole, and it didn't change really our overall time par, even though we're a little bit under what we post to the membership. It just, we're a lot more credible, I think, telling the members that this is how this hole played, because we have a whole bunch of data to back it up. And, they take the onus on themselves to keep that going and keep the pace of play where it is. And, no one wants to be the slow or the delayer or the slower player. So, the community and the culture of the club has embraced it for sure.
That's great. Sean, maybe to pose the question to you as well, maybe extend it a little bit. So firstly, the question, how have your members responded to you rolling it out, but maybe also extending it a bit, what's been the staff and the team buy-in on your side? Has that been uphill or has it been positive?
Yeah, in all honesty, it took a little bit of education to the membership in our golf committee, just to make them aware that this first year is kind of about setting our baseline, so that we have something to compare against. And, it really allowed us to evaluate what our pace of play policy was. And as I mentioned, there was some real low hanging fruit in terms of amending the policy that was already in existence that would immediately benefit the membership. And one of the things that we found with our members was there was confusion about what our existing pace of play policy was. It referenced 4 hours and 10 minutes as a time expectation, but then it also referenced, you cannot fall out of position. So, with the, increased scrutiny on our pace of play now that we're using Tagmarshal, people were kind of phoning into the golf shop probably a bit more regularly saying, there's a gap out here. Somebody's, falling behind or there's pace of play infraction. And, almost 95% of the time, we would go out and speak to the group that might have called in and inform them, the group is still playing in a 4-hour pace right now. They're under our time par, but they're playing behind a threesome, or, there was an open spot in the tee sheet before they even teed off. So, I think it just drew attention to the fact that we did need to redraft our pace of play policy. And I think that in turn was a benefit to the staff, because the staff, felt like they were in between a rock and a hard place of, enforcing a pace of play policy that wasn't necessarily the, easiest policy to understand in the first place. So.
So basically, you turned all of your members into marshals.
Exactly.
Okay, nice one. I think we're talking about data quite a bit, and analytical data. So then maybe the last portion of our chat, how have the tools allowed you to improve efficiency? Because that's obviously key. We all want to get more out of our staff and out of our labor hours, and people wasting time is not efficient. And also, how can we turn the effort that we're putting into immediately bankable outcomes and especially experience outcomes for players? So we've put up a little bit of data here, just to look at what that back end looks like for a club that uses Tagmarshal. So here's a month of July. I believe that's Donalda. So what we're looking at is what the starter accuracy is, for instance, meaning are the intervals being adhered to, because that is one of the variables that's important. To state the obvious, if you have a 10-minute interval, you're running one group at 8 minutes or 12 minutes, 2 minutes late, and the next group a little bit early, you're now reducing that interval to 7 minutes, and that's probably going to cause problems down the line. So you want your starter to adhere to that. Then what this is really a single day view. Each of these bars is a day, and we're tracking against the goal time, which at Donalda is 4:14. Did we come through okay? There's one day here that went a bit over. Most of them are bang on. I mean, this may have been a tournament, bad weather, right? But we can then look at that and we can click on it and we can then see every single tee time that was played on that day, and also maybe the ones where we had interactions. Down here's a breakdown of the hole by hole stats, including a breakdown of the green fairway, so tee box fairway and green. And often we see that tee box wait time, that's the pain point for players, right? So we want to understand that as much as possible. And some holes are just behaving from a data point of view in a way that we're not quite expecting. How can we make adjustments here? And then one of the key metrics is, and that's a big one up here too, is obviously pace of play is often measured as an average, but what really matters is how many of the rounds, because the average has got outliers, come through on pace or faster, and how many are slow or significantly slow. And at all of your courses, you're on pace or within 10 minutes of pace is really strong. So at Donalda, it's 87% on pace or within 10. At Priddis Hawk, it's 75% on pace or within 10. And then at Vancouver, it's 84% on pace or within 10. So this basically means a good flow and player happiness. And then this is really a whole month, right? So there may be a few days where it's a bit busy and you're going a bit over, but for you, also your results in terms of goal time versus average round time, it's like clockwork. Like your goal time is 4:14. At Donalda, you're coming in at 4:11 in a really busy July. At Priddis Hawk, 4:08 coming in at 4:05, and at Vancouver 4:10 coming in at 4:05. So Andrew, from your side, obviously you have the most experience in terms of having been and looked at data now for a bit more, because you've got season on season. How do you use this? And in terms of efficiencies, has it helped you? And does this sort of information help you get more out of your staff hours and also reduce those where you can?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, so we, as I mentioned a couple of times, the biggest reason for Tagmarshal in the onset was to try and reduce on-course traffic and at the same time save a bit of money in terms of labor. So, you know, I look at this July of this season, we can start to pinpoint some of those slower days as, you know, whether they were events or whatever they were. We'll look at, you know, the upcoming season and say, do we need to have, you know, maybe a dedicated person that day? And there's, you know, 10, 12 days there, we probably don't need presence on course, and it can be managed pretty efficiently from someone in the shop. And we'll also kind of dig deeper into those days that got slow and try and figure out what exactly caused those, because you know, I'm sure we got some complaints, and we always want to follow up with members and try and explain what might have happened and how we're going to try and improve it. So, you know, going back and looking at a month in a snapshot like this and being able to break down and deep dive into all the info is huge in terms of planning for next year, in terms of efficiency, budgeting, labor, all that sort of stuff.
John, from your side, is the data helpful? And also from an efficiencies point of view, the plans that you had in terms of where you want to get the system to do ABC, is it helping you achieve that?
Oh, absolutely. And I think this is one of the real benefits that we found with Tagmarshal was the analytical data that we could use to help determine, you know, pace of play, as Sean mentioned, not only for the day, but throughout the day. You know, and we would look at this and drill down a little bit further and see that 75% of our members were on pace. And we looked at it at a year end as far as what the members' average time were based on all the rounds they played. And we looked at where the average was and the people below that. And we want to use that as a bit of a learning moment for the members that, you know, are the constant delayers or are a little bit slower. And we'll look at, you know, what time of the day are they playing? And we'll give them the opportunity to maybe learn how they can be, you know, a faster player on the golf course and a better contributor to our overall pace of play. So the analytical data that was provided for us this year was huge. And I think it was a real bonus from, you know, our pace of play overall improved, but it's the analytical data that we're really starting to drill down on that we think that it's going to help us moving forward.
Yeah, I really like how you're using the player data, because obviously every single round gets recorded and then allocated to a player, and then you can really see who floats to the top, who's a delayer often, who's really on pace all the time, how you're using that so constructively. Maybe a question for Sean, from an efficiencies point of view, helpful to you guys, and also there were quite, and you mentioned that earlier, there are quite a few data benchmarks that you were trying to understand, and I really I really like how considered you are in saying we first need to know what's going on before we make big decisions, right? And it's not a case of, okay, let's turn this thing on and change everything in a week. But it's a big machine that you have running, like lots and lots of play. You need to be considered, need to know what you're doing. So has that been helpful to you guys, and what have you been able to do?
Yeah, so in terms of efficiencies from a staffing level, it's going to allow us to really target, where we utilize our staffing budget. To use a specific example, Wednesdays were our slowest pace of play, even though our pace of play was good on average over the course of the season. Wednesdays were 4:14, so they were above our time par. We actually didn't have very many complaints about Wednesdays as far as pace of play. It seemed like that was men's day. The guys were having some drinks, guys were having a good time. Now we can have a conversation with, the golf committee and say, okay, it's, Wednesday's slower than what our policy is looking for. Do we want to address that? Do we want to have a marshal out there? Is that okay? And we can kind of set that expectation with the guys that are playing men's night. So I think from a staffing perspective, it'll allow us to make some good decisions and informed decisions on that stuff. I think, more holistically with some of the challenges that we've had with access to the tee, this is going to allow us to make some good decisions in terms of guest policy, good decisions in terms of fivesomes, good decisions in terms of tee time intervals. If we can get more groups out there or more golfers out there, and we're going to have another year potentially like we have done the last couple of years of it being very challenging to get your golfers on the golf course, we can actually implement those changes and then immediately determine, what impacts that's had on the player experience. So that'll be good to have some conversations this off season, and hopefully the whole world opens up and we get a little bit more back to normal in terms of the busyness. But if we don't, we're armed with something that'll help us to make some good decisions.
Sure. Yeah, I think you're making a good point here in that once you have got a good handle on things and your quality of play is really good, where can you start looking for opportunities in terms of capacity, right? So we had a webinar the other day with Oakmont Country Club, the famous US Open hosts, and they really did what you're doing for 2 seasons, and then they started to tweak, and then they realized, okay, we can actually run our course faster early in the morning and set that expectation, and then we can reduce our interval a little bit and we can find another tee off time, because they're also incredibly busy. And that challenge of, can we make tee times available, especially on those busy days when people want to go out? Well, if we have another 1 or 2, they are so welcome, right? And we're still ensuring the quality of the experience is as high as it can possibly be. So that's where the opportunity lies, from a incremental improvement point of view, from a what can we do next, and yeah, it's just so great to see how the data is then really informing you and your teams with your policies and your plans. I've got one more little point to add, because we mentioned earlier the conditioning and superintendent budgets are massive. So given all this data that's available, and we can really track movement, we can show especially also where carts go, where don't they go, where is likely compaction, but also where areas that don't get any traffic. How can this help superintendents make better decisions on resource deployment, but also simply tracking their machinery and plugging them into the system? If there's gaps in play, can they get out and get a bit more done? I know that it's early days for you. Is that something that may come in handy for you, or something that you're considering to go a little bit more end to end with technology like this? I need to ask this question at somebody, so let me let me start with Andrew again, if you don't mind.
Yeah, I think it's something we'll look at in the future. I know that we're considering the cart tags with the geofencing for next year, just to get an idea of where our carts are going, and hopefully policing them a little bit better. But I know Paul, our superintendent, would probably love to see some of this info, and we're in discussions to maybe bring that on board here at Donalda and analyze it a little bit.
And John, what's your super's stance on data? Is he as switched on as you are?
Probably more so. He's totally in tune with this, and I think it'd be something that he would want to implement. He does use the view to check on where groups are, and if there's an opportunity to go back and maybe do some extended bunker maintenance if there's a gap, or one of the goals is that the members don't see any maintenance machinery or personnel out there. So if they're a little bit further ahead of that first group, they can go back and maybe do a little bit more. But absolutely, James would be totally interested in this, and I'm sure it's something that he's starting to look at for sure.
Yeah, I didn't ask that question very well. Thank you for making it easy for me with your answer there. It's an efficiency question, right? And we all need to. You mentioned staffing shortages. So how can we get more done with our available hours? Yeah, maybe a closing thought from your side, Sean, as to where do you see yourself moving to, and what are the next things that you're looking to tweak with your team into the new season, and hopefully it's going to stay as busy as it has been, right?
Yeah, we've obviously rewritten our pace of play policy during the down season here. It's been or it's about to be communicated to our membership in terms of what the new expectations are going to be, and so I think certainly next year it'll be just making sure that this policy is working out as we'd hoped it would be. I think going forward, if we still see the course maintaining kind of the level of play that we've seen over the last couple of years, that might be then looking at reducing our tee time intervals in certain portions of our tee sheet, allowing 5 sims at certain portions of the day. When we reintroduce guests, seeing what the effect would be on kind of this policy that we've written that's almost entirely been based on member play. So I think it's making some of those kind of incremental changes and inching towards what might be a better model for us.
Yeah, I think the guests will throw a nice spanner in your well-oiled machine. But yeah, good that you're so mindful of it. Gents, I think we've covered some fantastic ground, and we're on pace. Natalie is proud of me. Any questions from our audience? You've been very quiet there, guys. And maybe any other considerations in terms of I'll ask a cheeky question, and maybe somebody wants to answer it. So can you imagine turning this off again and going back to how you used to work? Or is that like, well, I'm taking away your cell phone and you have to use a dial-in phone again? Anyone who wants to have a go at this?
It'd be like going to pencil and paper for our tee sheets, and I think we've all the automated, we're all bought into Jonas or whatever automated tee sheet was. So I think turning this off would be going back to pencil and paper for managing your tee sheet, for me personally.
Yeah, I think the idea of aimlessly. Sorry, Sean.
No, after you, Andrew.
The idea of aimlessly driving the golf course looking for issues seems like a nightmare now. So yeah, don't take it away, Bodo.
I think gone are the days of the punch clock. Issuing that little piece of paper on the first tee, and asking people to make sure that they punch their scorecard at the end of the round, and then you have to pick up all of the little pieces of paper and then put it into a spreadsheet and whatever else that is. I mean, that just seems a little bit labor intensive, and it's cool to see a little bit more of a modern solution to an old problem here. So
yeah, thanks. I've got a question from Cord. I missed the first part of the session, maybe covered, but can you send players messages with the system? So the system that the clubs that are presenting today are using is a passive one. So it's really for the information of their staff, and then they would make a decision, are they wanting an interaction? But we do have a two-way option that does that. So the two things it does is obviously the yardage and those good old GPS tricks, but it does update the players on their live pace in terms of it gets calculated. Are you holding up anyone right now? Are you on pace or not? Or are you being held up by someone? So they can self-manage a bit better. And then, yes, the system pings their messages automatically if they're starting to fall out of position, and you can have that two-way communication. And we do have clubs that basically control everything from their pro shop because they have that way of communicating with the players. So I hope that answers the question. Okay, gents. Yeah, I know that we are on 55 minutes and we have a strict pace of play policy on our webinars. So I want to thank you for your fantastic insight and also the great work that all of you have done this season. It's certainly been challenging. I believe you all have received a Tagmarshal acknowledgement, which is we've got an award where we're tiering gold, platinum, and diamond partners. You cannot be a diamond partner in season 1. We're setting the standards a bit high there, but you've all performed exceptionally well, benchmarked against 400 other clubs. And it really shows the effort and the discipline that you have put in and the outcomes that you're getting based on data and based on the performance. So well done. And we're really excited to see what you will all do next season. Now that, I mean, Andrew, you're an off pro, but John and Sean, after 1 year in, yeah, it's exciting what's possible once everybody's got a handle of it. The players know what's up, right? That's when you can really take another few steps forward. So looking forward to that. And my last question is, will we meet you guys down at the PGA show in Orlando, or are you giving it a skip? Who's coming?
We're taking one more year off.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'm a probable.
Okay, probable. Sean?
I think I'm taking a year off here too. I think I'll actually be down in Bandon Dunes with some members at that point in time. So.
Oh, that's a tough call. That's a tough call. Of course, you'll be at Bandon Dunes. I'll tell you a funny story from Bandon Dunes. So they're running all 5 courses on the system, and one day our support gets a freaked out message that Tagmarshal is down. They don't know what's happening out on their course and how are they going to run the operation today. Please help. And turns out that there was a truck that drove into a cell phone tower and took out the entire regions or the entire county's cell coverage. And that took a while. And they said, well, it's so funny that, and that was very early on in their usage of the system, maybe a month in. They said like 2 months ago, we sort of were flying blind on a daily basis. And now we know what's possible. We're now flying blind and it feels completely unnatural. So that was a funny one, and so Bandon, hopefully they'll make us proud. Don't fall out of position; they'll be onto you when you go down, Sean. And John will check in on what the latest says about the rounds that you've played with your members there last week. Okay, right. Gents. Thanks everyone for your time. Yeah, have a good break. The holiday is well deserved, and then we'll check in with you. Yeah, when we get a chance, and certainly PGA show the year after you've taken a break. Thanks, everyone. Really appreciate your time and insight.
That's good. Thank you.
Thanks, guys. Pleasure.
Thanks, everyone.